Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about Taylor Swift's 10th studio album, Midnights, which came out on October 21st. Boy, do I have things to say. Warning to any Swifties who happen to be watching this video. I am going to try and be fair and balanced in my review of this record. But I am not a diehard Swiftie. If you've watched any of my Taylor Swift reviews on this channel, you will know, and I will link all of my reviews that I've done in the description, that, Taylor is someone I really respect. I think she's a phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal vocalist when, she really lets that shine. She's got such great ideas, and she's just an artist in every sense of the word, and a musician. But for example, there's never an album of hers that I can say doesn't have some filler, for me personally. So I wouldn't call myself a stan. So obviously I'm going to have some critiques. And I remember my last full, new music Taylor album, Evermore. I remember when I sat down to film that review, I was kind of like, I felt really bad that I wasn't praising the album as glowingly as everyone else was, but I also knew I always want to be honest on this channel. And so that's just something that I've kind of had to overcome, as this dilemma. And here we are with Midnights, and, it's technically 2 years almost since Evermore, her last new album. But in the meantime, we've gotten 2 re-releases. We've had Fearless, Taylor's version, and Red, Taylor's version in 2021. We mysteriously have not had another Taylor's version come out in almost a year, which is not something I think any of us saw coming. I think we all kind of thought that Taylor wanted to get through a lot of these re-releases a lot quicker. I was assuming we'd get at least one more re-release by this point. But 2022 is basically just this new Taylor record. But again, Taylor has been feeding her fans voraciously. They have never gone wanting for Taylor music, especially in the last 5 years. It's quite staggering, the sheer volume of music that she has put out. And one does have to wonder, at some point, are we getting to the point where it really is quantity over quality? And that was unfortunately something that I had a big critique on for Evermore, as I felt like Folklore was just this masterpiece of a record. It was written very quickly, but it was so classic and so wonderfully made. And then Evermore felt a little bit self-indulgent, especially following so close after the Folklore album, and the fact that there were 15 more songs, and I don't know, I just was having a harder time getting into it. It felt like these were all of the songs that just weren't good enough for Folklore, but she decided to put them out anyway, so obviously I'm not going to enjoy it as much. So Midnights is a completely different thing. We're out of that sort of Aaron Dresner, woodsy kind of vibe. But when we got the album cover and the title, which was announced during the VMAs this year, we have Taylor holding, a match lighter and looking kind of, like seductive, but also kind of vindictive and also reflective, thinking about the idea of midnights, with the whole idea of meet me at midnight. I'm going to make each song sort of about late night thoughts that I've had that are keeping me up at night. And of course, it is interesting that, she talks about midnight as being, this witching hour, when reality, I'm a nocturnal person. To me, like, the real witching hour is closer to like 3 or 4 in the morning. Because it's like, staying up till midnight, it's like I do that every night. That's almost bedtime. But, she does put out a 3 a.m. edition. So there is a real allusion to, well, if Midnights is the, somewhat reflective middle of the night, then there's the 3 a.m. part, which is like, this is when we're really kind of in the depression, so to speak, or we're really in our feelings and processing things late at night. And so we have a crepuscular record. We have on the album cover, an old-fashioned sort of vinyl cover. We've got side A and side B with all the tracks. And she was going to release all of the track titles using this old kind of lottery machine, one of those crank things. You pull out the ball and then she would read it in kind of a random order. But unfortunately, the track list got leaked, which caused her to sort of rush kind of the rest of the track list reveal, which is kind of unfortunate. Taylor's stuff usually gets leaked. A lot of artists do. It's kind of inevitable. The big surprise was that we didn't get a lead single for this project. I was sitting here counting down the weeks, and I was like, well, I could see her still waiting till like maybe even 2 or 3 weeks before the record. Like, that's understandable, but no, nothing. She wanted it to be almost as if it was a surprise album, except this time we knew about it in advance. And to be honest, I don't know. I guess for the marketing side of things, it worked to have the hype build for almost 2 months. before the album came without a single note of music being revealed. But I kind of would have preferred if this album had honestly just been a surprise, because I felt like, I don't know, I was getting really hyped up for this project. And for the 2 month wait with not a single to be given to, so we had no idea what it would sound like. But we did have hints. If you look at the song, if you look at the producers, we had some hints. I was kind of underwhelmed. And so, that gets me into the brunt of this whole review, which, again, brace yourself if you're a hardcore Swiftie. I know I'm not going to please everyone with this review, but I have to just come out and say it. I am underwhelmed by this record. I was seeing, and I do feel like I follow perhaps one too many Taylor Swift stans on Twitter. It seems to me that, as far as music tweeting goes, Taylor Swift kind of dominates most of the conversation that I see on Twitter. I don't even follow. I just see it on my timeline constantly. Taylor Swift, chart sales, Taylor Swift metrics, Taylor Swift random facts and Easter eggs and all of these things. And I'm just like, look, I just don't care that much, but it's for some reason in my feed, and I haven't bothered to filter it out more by using that tab that says I don't want to see this anymore, because I don't like doing that when I do want to know what Taylor's doing, but I like having an eye in the fandom. But I'm not going to go all there. I'm not buying any of these things. I do have some Taylor Swift physical CDs, but I'm not really into that. The fans seem to be really, I don't know, they're falling in line, let's just say. The numbers on Spotify and the sales that we're seeing coming through after the first week are staggering. The Taylor Swift is beating her own records, in terms of streaming, like with 1989, she just beat her own record with that. She's gotten the most sales, obviously, this year. She's beaten Adele with 30. She's, I think, beaten she's beaten Beyonce with Renaissance. I mean, Taylor Swift is kind of just this anomaly. And I've talked about this in the past with even in digital, physical media, she still sells. And that's something that no other artist can really hope for at this point. And then on streaming, she's just, all of her songs from the album are on the top 15 of iTunes and Apple Music, and on, it's honestly, you get to a point where you do start to feel like the fans will just buy anything that she puts out. And the more fans she gets, the more, each project is going to just keep beating every record. Someone pointed out on Twitter that, Taylor Swift probably did do a lot of good promotion for herself in doing the re-releases, because Gen Z, the younger generation that didn't necessarily grow up with her country music from 10 years ago, has been rediscovering all of that music and becoming fans through that, as well as from her more recent pop material. And so maybe perhaps Taylor has kind of done something very smart here in keeping longevity across generations, because, one could argue that perhaps a lot of maybe her OG listeners may have moved on a little bit, though not entirely. I still think the millennials are still very much listening to Taylor, but it's Gen Z that's just really, really taking it home for her. And that's not something that a lot of her contemporaries can tout. Taylor even said it herself. I don't know if it was on Jimmy Fallon or one of the late shows recently that, at 25, most female artists are sort of put out to pasture. That's historically kind of how it's been. And the fact that, in 10 years past that date almost, she can be selling, and not only selling well, but doing better than she's done in the past, is quite remarkable. Her career has just still been constantly on the upward curve. And I constantly ask myself, when is it going to start to dip? I do kind of wonder, because I personally feel like, and again, this is just coming from me, saying this, it's my opinion. I think Taylor is oversaturating the market a little bit. And personally, I think it's a little bit much. I feel like I would appreciate all of these albums more individually if there was more space in between them. When we move from album to album, and when we get the vault tracks, there's so many on that, it's like a new album already. It's a little bit much for me. And at the end of the day, again, if you're a Taylor Swift stan, you're going to love it. But I'm not in that Taylor Swift, I have to hear everything she's ever made kind of frenzy, I apologize. And again, it's just not I don't love her that much. So, I'm sitting here just thinking about all the artists that haven't released albums in 6 or 7 years at this point. And I'm just like, ugh. Because we know we're going to get more re-releases next year. I mean, Taylor basically hinted at Speak Now being the next re-release in the Bejeweled music video. And a lot of people speculate that's probably going to come by the spring. So yeah, we're going to probably get that. And we'll probably get 1989 next year as well. So that's at least 2 more albums. We also know, but re-releases. We also know that Taylor's going to be going on tour next year. That's pretty much confirmed at this point. She ironically has not gone on tour in 5 years. Granted, she's put out like 6 albums in that time, but that's because, the pandemic and the re-releases and all of that. But anyway, so next year, I do not think we are going to get a entirely new Taylor Swift record, but we will get more of those Taylor's versions. But all of that aside, Midnights is an album that I went into with open ears and expectations, as I always have, because I know Taylor is a phenomenal artist. I knew I wasn't going to love every song. That's always the case with some of Taylor's records. But I've got to be honest with you, and I did hear people say at the beginning that this album was Midnights, like the album is underwhelming. The biggest critique, and I'm going to just jump right off of the gate, the biggest critique I have is not with her, but her choice of producer. It is Jack Antonoff. He is the problem, not her. Maybe she's not the problem as she quips an antihero. Jack, why? Why does she keep coming back to him? They've been working for nearly a decade together, and I really think it's run its course. His production is just so stale at this point, and I really feel like Taylor, the reinvention thing, it's like doing something so much more kind of revolutionary than what she's given us with this production is just really disappointing to me. The production side of this record is the part of the record that I don't have a lot of positive things to say about. I'm not necessarily saying that it's like abominable. I'm just saying it's very forgettable. It's very non-existent to bare bones, to repetitive, to monotonous. And that's just not a good thing for a pop record. This album is being branded as a return to pop music for Taylor. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this record being a love child between 1989 and Reputation. And of course, Jack Antonoff worked on some songs on both of those projects, but there were also a lot of other producers in there. Max Martin, Shellback. I'm really disappointed that she's not going back to some of them because it's like, I mean, come on, there's even hip hop producers. It would just be a bit more of an interesting sonic palette to work with. Sure, have Jack on a couple tracks like you always do, but don't give him carte blanche for the whole record, girl. Really, at this point, this got to be the last full Jack record because between Lorde and between Lana Del Rey and her and other artists, it's just getting played out. And I think that a lot of people, and I was even just reading an article in The Atlantic, which is basically calling it out, that Antonoff is dating himself by, sounding derivative of his own stuff on all of these songs. Someone called the moody synth pop 50 Shades of Grey-esque. And that's so apt because this is such a 2015 sound. He's so stuck in that sort of time and his production is not evolving. And also, he makes weird choices with some production. Like, there's some stuff on one song, on Labyrinth, we could just have a really nice kind of ethereal, atmospheric synth chord going on. But there's this compressed, kind of muddied arpeggio. And it just, I don't know. It's this weird sort of half-assed sort of electronica that it's not going anywhere for the song. And look, I understand that this record is being touted as a late night record. People were talking about how 1989 and Reputation were like the big parties, and this is sort of the after party. This is like crashing at your bed in the middle of the night and having some champagne. Like I was sort of anticipating that there would be more slower songs, but the only really up-tempo song we got on this record is Karma. And I gotta be honest with you, sonically, it's my favorite song on the record. Karma is everything I want from a pop Taylor record. Not only I do think the lyrics, although they're, not her best, I think they're still like a wonderful kind of catchy, wear on a sweater and tout with your best friends. Karma is my best friend. Karma is, all these things because it's something I sleep well at night knowing I am, on the right side of. And that's a wonderful sort of theme for, I think, Taylor going after, especially in the time of Kanye and his downfall. It's just so apt, and I'm really here for it. But there's just, I wish we had more of that. If the record was going to be, touted as a return to pop music instead of this kind of indie alternative, lo-fi, moody production synth stuff, which again has a place. But when it's all the same, and then on top of that, when the songs themselves do not have melodies that really that really kind of stick the landing the way they should or feel fully formed, that's a problem for me. And unfortunately, I'm a melody guy. I do appreciate lyrics, but melody comes first to me most of the time. And I'm going to be honest, the melodies just aren't in on this record. The melodies just aren't it. There's a couple exceptions, but for a lot of the songs, in one ear out the other, I'm finding it really hard for me to get engaged. But I do want to kind of just, I guess, start with the negatives and work my way up to the positives because I want to end on a positive note. And first, I'm going to talk about the 13 songs that came with the original version, and then I'll talk about the 3 a.m. tracks, which was an added surprise. We got 7 more songs, of course, because Taylor gives us too much. As always, she overfeeds us. So my least favorite songs on the record. My least favorite absolutely is going to be Question. I feel Question, and I can see a lot of people in the Taylor Swift fandom probably putting it at their bottom ranking because it's just probably the laziest melody because honestly, it sounds like there's a metronome going and Jack Antonoff's doing his weird sort of like on the beat, just like low-key, warbling, kind of off-kilter metallic synth stuff that just kind of revolves around a basic beat. And then Taylor is like kind of just the melody is just basically trying to match that. It's almost monotone. And lyrically, it's nothing I haven't heard before from Taylor. I mean, a lot of these songs are toying between being absolutely in love and enamored with someone and then second guessing yourself in those feelings. And don't get me wrong, she's totally entitled to write millions and millions of songs about that. But I do feel at a certain point, and it's interesting because Taylor has been with Joe Alwyn for like 6 years now. They've been together for a long time. And I'm going to be honest. I'm getting a little bit, because I'm in my single era. I'm starting to like really wish that she had her big breakup because the music would probably be the best she's made yet. I mean, I feel like Florence said it best. There's not much to write about between two people who are in love and happy. The great grandeur and drama of melody and ballads come from these breakups. And I hope that Joe and Taylor make it. But, I'm not saying that Taylor doesn't find a way to write interesting material from being in this relationship. I think a lot of what she's writing about is going way back into the past. And she's singing about John Mayer on some tracks. She's singing about Tom Hiddleston and Calvin Harris. So she's sort of like, late at night going back on these old relationships, which we all do. That's totally normal and like fair game for her to write about. What could have been, woulda, coulda, shoulda, that song. But, on a song like Question, lyrically, this second guessing and thinking back to an ex and sort of asking a question, this is territory she's, trod before in more interesting ways. And then, okay, the other song that's a big miss for me is Vigilante Shit. Now, when we all saw that song title, we all gasped, right? We all clutched our pearls because, the girl who wrote Love Story is actually writing a song with that title. We come a long way since 2008 Taylor, haven't we? This song is Reputation-esque with the production, but melodically very stale. Very minimal production. Draw the cat eye sharp enough to kill a man. Probably the most interesting line on the record. It just kind of draws you in. You did some bad things, but I'm the worst of them. And this song is kind of flaunty and, it is a bit of a change of pace because this is a song that's not, all of the songs on this record are a little insecure. This song isn't. It's all about revenge, but she's done the revenge thing so much more interestingly on Reputation. Come on, like at the end of the day, I mean, this is filler. Okay, this is filler stuff. You can't tell me otherwise. My next least favorite song is going to be Midnight Rain. I think the vocal distortions on it are just a little bit left field for Taylor, especially on a record where, if this was Reputation, I would expect it more, but I don't think it pays off as well as it could have. I wanted that pain, pain, that reach up an octave. It just, melodically, Don't do it for me. It don't do it for me. I sometimes feel like Taylor wants to make annoying melodies for me. I don't know. She doesn't want these classic, chords that rise and fall. No, she wants to do like these strange octave jump things, and like she wants to sort of stay on this monotone beat and then make a weird jump up and then back down. Like it's very much Jack Antonoff's production, isn't it? It just fits. It's like two peas in a pod. He wanted it comfortable, I wanted that pain. He wanted a bride, I was making my own name. Probably reflecting on a relationship she had way back in the early days when she was just getting her career started, because obviously this isn't about Joe Alwyn. I mean, I'm sure that at certain points they've wondered, Joe and Taylor have somewhat different careers, and Taylor's like a megastar, and Joe, he's pretty famous in his own right as an actor. But reconciling their fame and their paths in that direction together as a couple has probably been a discussion they've had a lot of the time. But I really think this is more almost kind of an invented relationship she's come in metaphorically kind of experiencing through her songwriting, which is, what if I decided that I didn't want to date any men anymore because I was just so focused on my singing career again? But I now she knows she can balance the two. The beating up yourself, is prevalent, which I relate to. So much of it is relatable. I choose the pain because it's something at this point, I seem to experience it all the time. It must be something I'm in love with. You want it easy? No, no, no. I'm gonna subconsciously always choose pain. I'm sorry to whoever's with me. Moving on up my ranking, this is a different way for me to do an album ranking, but this is how I'm doing it. I hate to say it, but Labyrinth. I mentioned, the strange little like nope. It's like a grinder sound. It's like opening up the grinder app. It disrupts the vibe. It disrupts the vibe. No, I mean, folklore could do this way stronger. This is not Epiphany. This is not Epiphany. The haunted, misty vocals with the echoes. It's a nice sound on paper. It's just not executed as well here for me. This is going to be an unpopular one, but Mastermind is kind of low for me. I do think the production is more interesting. It's a frothing and bubbling synth that, it does pick up the pace a little bit. It perks the ears up after a sleepy record. All's well that ends well being with you. I mean, this is Taylor kind of closing the album saying, look, the fates came together for us, but I was also in charge. I did things to make sure that we met when we did. The dominoes cascaded in a line just like clockwork. What if I told you I'm the mastermind? Because, she's reflecting back to, what is it, 2016 when they first met, probably some like red carpet event or some Brooklyn party. Like, I can just see it now. It's so Gossip Girl. I can just see it. And, everything about that, that she treads on the song Delicate, right? That's being in hindsight sort of construed through her brain as like, well, I'm really good at like planting Easter eggs and being kind of a schemer. So, maybe I did plan this all along. And then the guy's like, yeah, you did because you're crazy. You're crazy like that. And honestly, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. And for Taylor, I think songwriting wise, it's par for the course. I can't complain. I think songwriting wise, this is one of her stronger ones because it's so her, we're not just writing something kind of vague, teenage, love in the city kind of romance novel stuff. Like this is kind of what Taylor's bread and butter is with her songwriting and her storytelling these days. You're on your own, kid. Again, some unpopular opinions here. The melody, if I get that out of the way, I mean, again, it's repetitive. It's not very. It's doing the same thing. The ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 da. It just follows that up, and it's like a loop. It's a closed loop. It never ends. For the most part, and so melodically, the song just doesn't grasp me. But it is lyrically one of her most vulnerable songs, recounting when she was a young person looking for love and feeling as though life was out to get her. You're on your own, kid. You can face this. I gave my blood, sweat, and tears for this. I starved my body in the bridge she mentions, because there were pages turned with the bridges burned. I searched the party of better bodies. That line stuck out because I was like, it's an interesting way of describing, body insecurity. And that's something we're going to touch on in one of the songs in the music video for it, because it's a really interesting theme in this record and a bit of controversial topic to discuss. But yeah, she's relatably reflecting on the fact that, the outcast or the person who felt like they were always putting in work and not getting anything in return, in terms of chasing a guy or whatever, finding friends. The cruel reality of just like, this was never meant to be for me. This was never going to work for me back then. And I needed that tough love. Lavender Haze opens up the record. Probably one of the more interesting productions on the record. I guess I would say Maroon might be my next least favorite song. We're getting into the middle territory, like just okay songs, not really gonna write home about them. Maroon, yeah, it's for me. Lavender Haze, a little stronger. I think we're gonna get a music video for it. Production wise, probably the most hip hop. It's definitely got a little bit of that like hip hop shimmer to the production. She's a little bit more, amped up. The bass is really strong here. There's some layers to this song production wise. Um, and she has her high, breathy vocals, which are hit or miss for me. Sometimes I like them. Sometimes I kind of, I don't know, melodically again, it's that rise to that octave that's not as interesting to me. I think the chorus has a more interesting, I think the verses have more interesting melody lines than the chorus. And that's actually a theme, I think, for a lot of this record. The choruses are, like I said, stuck in these closed loops that aren't really interesting. They're just these note patterns that just, I don't know, not a lot of thought went into it. But then the melodies of the verses are where the melodies really shine. I can't, that line on that, like, that's clever. That's clever, and it works with the production. So I give her props for that. Snow on the Beach with Lana Del Rey. Boy, is this song disappointing. I wanted so much from this feature because obviously Lana Del Rey and Taylor would be a wonderful combo. And Taylor and Lana do sound wonderful together, but Lana doesn't really get her own like time to shine. And she technically doesn't get the full Imogen Heap treatment or even Dixie Chicks treatment where you can't even really hear them. They're so in the background, but even then, Lana only really comes through in certain parts of the song. She doesn't get her own verse, which is regrettable. Again, Taylor just doesn't like to have female artists, take over verses with her. I don't know, that's just a thing. I do think lyrically this is one of my like favorites because the idea of Snow on the Beach and the way she describes, lights flashing by her as people walking past. This scene feels like what I once saw on a screen. I searched Aurora Borealis green. I've never seen someone lit from within, blurring out my periphery. My smile is like I won a contest, and to hide that would be so dishonest. It's a heavenly pairing vocally. The melody, I do like the percussive strings. It's nice to have some different instrumentation. And actually, I wanted to bring that up on another track because I believe it's Sweet Nothing is the other track where we actually get some other instrumentals. This one gives us some strings, and on Sweet Nothing, we get some jazzy. We get some horns coming in, and Sweet Nothing's another cute song. It's a nice, simple, and sweet song on the keyboard. But the, staccato strings, the airiness, the ambiance, this song does feel featherweight, like it's floating. The imagery that's conjured up, it's very much the imagery of Snow on the Beach. Weird, but freaking beautiful. And it's a wonderful kind of meditation on feeling in love. So I do give her props for this one, even though I still want more melodically from it. Again, that's a theme from this, and I wish Lana had a little bit more presence on the track. Even though Lana's so good at being sort of a soft backing vocal, even though it's interesting because she's so much higher on the scale than Taylor, and so she's kind of when she pops out, it's just this wonderful burst of soprano. Bejeweled is like kind of 1989, like big band pop. Again, I want more from it in the production. I do think it's a bit bizarre. The part where it's just nice, it's like, okay, all right, that's not where I expected this melody to go. It feels like a little bit like there's windows there for more interesting melodic stuff, but she just chooses to leave that open and just have what could be a breakdown be just a continuation of the production line and then put that nice. It's just like, I want more from this. The song building and it doesn't get where it needs to go because we really do have a build on this one. Bejeweled is like asking for us to have a moment, an EDM moment. It doesn't quite get there. And it's also kind of like Cinderella, the music video. It's clever. Having Laura Dern, it's kind of cheesy. It's kind of played out. It's Taylor doing, her own kind of like clever and witty take on a fairy tale in a modern context. And I mean, again, it's something we've seen from her before, so I'm not really that like blown away by it anymore, but it's cute. I don't know. It's just passable for me. But then the two songs that, really do bring this album home for me. I mean, I've already talked about Karma, and we have Antihero. So Antihero has the strongest melody. I think the thesis statement of the record, insecurities late at night, thinking about not just you and your love relationships, but also just you as a person and how you fit in with people. The music video, plays with this. I mean, she has her, alter ego coming in and saying, "Hi, I'm the problem. I'm at your door." It's pretty clever. I mean, it's a little on the nose, but that's Taylor, right? She's always a little on the nose. That's what we expect, especially with her music videos. And there is that scene where she gets on the scale. And of course, it's now been edited and removed from YouTube because people were getting upset that it read fat and she's very clearly thin and her other alter ego is like watching her. Taylor has been hounded for, being too fat for a lot of her career and, suspected of being pregnant. And, I mean, it's terrible, but like, what someone who looks like a supermodel, like Taylor has been very thin for much of her life, she gets still this rampant like fat phobia coming at her. And she has admitted about having, troubles with eating disorders, flirting with eating disorders because of it. And it's a shame that Taylor kind of had to, pull back and not include something that alludes to that in this video. Though I do think there might have been not necessarily subtler ways, but maybe cleverer ways of kind of alluding to eating disorder than just putting the words fat on the scale. I do think that that word in itself, in her context, I can understand why actual people who are struggling with being, with fat phobia in their lives because they're bigger, and always have been, or however, what have you. I can understand how that's kind of like upsetting to see, because it does kind of reek of Taylor not really considering that. But obviously, this is Taylor's own inner struggle. I mean, skinny people struggle with their weight, okay? It's not something that, eating disorders spares you from. I mean, if anything, it's far worse for people who are, on the outside looking very healthy and thin, but in the inside constantly think they're too big. They could lose a few more pounds. And so Taylor is clearly, wanting to, and she doesn't talk about this very often. So it's kind of a shame that she's been sort of silenced on that. I don't know if she'd maybe put a different word instead of fat on the scale, something that alluded to the fact that she'd like to lose a few more pounds, even though we can all clearly see that she's very thin. If she had done it in a way that maybe wasn't so provocative like that, I just think that that word is so loaded in today's discourse around, eating disorders, but also around body positivity, because now we want to celebrate people more who are, bigger and they can't help it, and not demonize them for it so much. But two things can exist at once. And Taylor wasn't trying to, belittle or, and clearly in the context, if you have a brain and any kind of empathy for someone who's going through this, you understand where she's coming from. So do I think Taylor should have changed the video? No. Okay. I do think it's going a little bit too far in the, sort of lane of like an artist can't process their own struggle, in some way artistically at all. They can't talk about it at all. Taylor, because she's thin, cannot at all talk about the fact that sometimes she, wishes she was skinnier, or that the fact that she's still hounded by this day, probably, I don't know, people in the media, like, newspapers and magazines or whatever, paparazzi blogs, catching her when she's not rail thin and photoshopping her. And so it's just, yeah, it's a sticky situation. I think, and obviously she's alluding to being really tall too. I mean, she says, "I feel like everyone's a sexy baby and I'm a monster on a hill." Taylor's 5'10". So she is really tall in that part of the music video. And that is obviously a metaphor for feeling like different, like an alien. Like that's not so much. But I also think it has a bit to do with that when she's talking about feeling insecure in her body. It's not just about weight, it's about height as well. And we don't see people getting upset about her pretending to be a giant, because that's a different, so it's the same kind of thing applied to the thin discourse, but we can't, have a nuanced conversation about that apparently on the internet without going full, we must, attack and we must cancel. So that's a little a bit of a shame. But anyway, Antihero is a strong song. Definitely lead single vibes. I would have seen her putting it out as the lead single. Wouldn't have a problem with it. I do want to touch about the 3 a.m. tracks. Honestly, there's actually, when I listened to the 3 a.m. version, some songs that really kind of made me feel a little hopeful about Taylor and the fact that she's not going to make every single song from here on out sound exactly like what she made on Midnights. Songs like High Infidelity, my favorite song on the 3 a.m. edition, has production that I can really sit with. It has a melody that really sits well with me. It definitely is not groundbreaking, but it's a nice, pleasant vibe song that I, really enjoy. That, I do think some of the other songs on Midnights could have sounded a little more polished like it. I also think that Bigger Than the Whole Sky has this triumphant sort of echoed out 80s garage band sound, and it's earnest and deeply emotional and reflective in the lyricism and in the vocal delivery. She says what could have been, would have been, should have been, and that's another song later on in the record, which I think is very interesting. Apparently, a lot of mothers who have suffered miscarriages are sort of claiming this song. They're saying they feel such emotion listening to it because it's very relatable to them. Well, I assumed it was written about a relationship, someone you got to know for far too short a time and then you had to lose them. But obviously, there's themes of loss in terms of death in here as well. And you could easily construe it as about a miscarriage, or, losing a child prematurely, losing someone at a young age. I'm never going to meet what could have been, would have been, what should have been you. I mean, that's a very powerful sentiment that I think anyone who's gone through that will just break down hearing. The other Midnight's track I want to shout out is The Great War. Aaron Dresner is on this one, which I think it's interesting that she relegated the Aaron Dresner tracks to the Midnight's 3 a.m. edition. And I'm sort of vibing with these songs more than the Jack Antonoff Midnight's side. So there you go. I mean, this sounds so 1989. The melody, it's catchy, it's upbeat, and yet it's also melancholic. It's that beautiful blend. Comparing a breakup and the tug of war of a relationship to a great battle, to the Great War, all that bloodshed, crimson clover, sweet dream was over. My hand was the one you reached for all throughout the Great War. And then, okay, so the rest of them, yeah, Glitch is probably my least favorite. Sonically, doesn't really go anywhere for me. And then Paris is a Jack Antonoff one, so, he comes back into the fold, and I just kind of have to deal with it. I love how she calls out, a red carpet where all the outfits were unbearable, just like 2003, when, everyone had horrible outfits at red carpets back then. So it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. And, it's an interesting allusion to the fact that, like, when you're so in love, you kind of want to be off the grid. And, did you catch the news? No, I was in Paris. I'm not on my phone all the time because that's something I always kind of imagine for myself. If I ever find the man of my dreams, maybe I won't be on Twitter so much. Maybe I won't be so glued to the news. I'll have things to do. I'll have a, honeymoon to be on. And the world's ending, but you know what? I'm on my honeymoon right now. I'm in Paris, okay? I'm in Paris, bitches. So straight to voicemail. I do appreciate that. I mean, again, this album is a mix of like utter heartbreak and honeymoon stuff. It's Taylor going through, I mean, there's wonderful moments where we get glimpses into Taylor and Joe's relationship. I love in Sweet Nothing, she mentions a pebble. I found a pebble in your pocket, and does it miss Wicklow sometimes? That must be from Wicklow, Ireland. I'm assuming they might have gone on a trip there. And it's such a cute lyric because it really gives an insight into the playfulness of the innocence of their relationship, because that's something that's so relatable about, a memory of a vacation from a pebble that you find in a pocket, and then you romanticize it. I mean, that's just such a sweet nothing, right? Like a sweet little anecdote to write about. And if we want to consider, Taylor's talked about she has 3 types of pen. She has glitter pen songwriting, fountain pen songwriting, and quill songwriting. I think this album has a pretty high amount of fountain pen songwriting, but occasionally we get some glitter pen. There is some Quill. There is some Quill in there. I'm not going to try and guess which is which, but I think Quill was more folklore and Evermore. But I think this album's a lot of fountain pen stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not my record. It's not my Taylor Swift record. I'm left at the end of the day just kind of feeling like, there's just not many songs that really get the blood. There's no goosebump moments. There's no moments where I'm just like really that blown away. I mean, again, Snow on the Beach and Antihero are the songs I'm probably going to come back to the most from this record. But so much of, and Karma, of course. I don't know. I just feel like Taylor, she really is a wonderful songwriter, but I also feel like she needs to write her poetry book. She needs to get that out of her system because I felt this way with Evermore. Some of these songs maybe would have been better as standalone poems. Don't try and put them to music. It's just not really. I just don't think she's really considering the sonic side of things. I would love to have some more, acoustic instrumentation come through. I'm not saying there can't be synth production everywhere. I'm just saying we need more horns coming in so that we get some jazzy stuff like we got on False God, which was such a wonderful, songs like this kind of sound like that from Lover, but we could have more of that jazzy influence. We need more piano. We hardly have any actual piano on this record unless it's like some synth keyboard. We need more strings. I really, some flutes. I don't know. We woodwinds. We need something in this. We need some more. We need some more in the instrumental department. We need more with the production. I'm not saying it needs to be loud and overbearing and based out to oblivion, but we need more interesting production. We need out melodies that don't like follow it to the T and make it kind of sound monotonous and repetitive. I also don't really like how Taylor likes to jump ahead and be arrhythmic. She doesn't really like to follow the melody line in some of her verses and stuff. And you can get away with that if you're meant to be this avant-garde, kind of artist. But she's trying to make pop songs. At the end of the day, it just is a little bit. I want a Katy Perry kind of like pop rhythm and hook. That's what I want, and that's something that she's just not bringing us anymore. And I don't know, she's just not working with A-list pop producers anymore. And I wonder, when she's going to return to that or if she will. Maybe. I don't know. But I really, really hope that maybe I don't want to play with you anymore. She puts Jack Antonoff away because it's overstayed its welcome. It's overstayed its welcome. I'm sorry. So ultimately, I mean, Midnight's got, I think, a 7 out of 10 by Pitchfork, and the Swifties were livid because all of the other reviews I was seeing were like way too high. I was like, a 7 out of 10, I think is fair. I would probably go a little lower, but I'm a little harsh like that. But I don't like to rate albums. But let's be honest, this is not her best work. This is nowhere near Folklore. This is nowhere near 1989. And God, even I never really thought Reputation was really that good of a record. It had some bops, but I didn't think of it as that substantive. But this is making me rather listen to Reputation. I'm going to be honest with you. I just, every song on this record is like Call It What You Want, and then just like a derivative version of it. It's that same lo-fi kind of stuff, like Call It What You Want-esque, kind of played out through a whole record. No, I don't want that. Where's the Ready For It kind of songs? Where's the This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things? Where's the I Know Places? Where's the style? Where's the blank space? I mean, it's just this record's, it's a miss for me, and I'm disappointed in that because I thought conceptually it would be very interesting. I also think Midnights is a really bland album title, but Taylor kind of has a thing for that. I mean, she named an album Lover, which I thought was a horrible album title. Never really understood that choice. So maybe this one's not as bad as that, but Midnights is a little on the nose for an album title. For what a songwriter she is, she could really come up with more interesting album titles. But anyway, that's just me. What are your thoughts on this record? Am I being too harsh? I'm sorry if I am, but I do not think that this is the kind of pop music that, I don't know, it's just not exciting to me. It's kind of run its course, and it needs some more variation. I mean, I guess you could say this record's cohesive. It's probably her most cohesive yet. But maybe that's not a good thing in this case. So, yeah, let me know what your favorite songs are, what your least favorites, if you agree, disagree. Be nice. No, I'm just kidding. Go at me. I know I'm harsh. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I will link in the description all my Taylor Swift reviews that I have reviewed, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.